Welcome back to Frigid, where we take a deep dive with a keen eye into cold cases across the state of Oklahoma. My name is Kaylie Cotten, and today I'm joined by Sonja Hill and Micah Osborne, and we're talking about a case out of Okemah, Oklahoma. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah. So we are talking about Floyd Osborne Jr., correct?
Right.
And Floyd was your cousin?
He was my cousin.
Yes, and he was your father?
Yes.
Right. So Floyd was found in his home on October 14th, 2012, right?
Well, it was in his aunt's home.
In his aunt's home, okay.
Right.
And he had been attacked. And at the time when they found him, he had been stabbed several times, right?
18
times, goodness, okay. So he'd been stabbed, and when they found him, he was still alive, correct?
Right.
And he was taken to a hospital.
Yes.
And then at some point later on, he passed away.
He passed away shortly after he got to the hospital.
Okay. From his injuries. So, was he 28 at the time?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how old were you at the time, Micah?
It was the day before my 9th birthday.
I'm so sorry. So, give me a timeline, if you could. Obviously, you were very young, but maybe you have a better idea, Sonja, of that night or just a couple days before leading up to that night, what exactly transpired?
Well, he was in Old Mulgee the day before at his mom's house. And then his brother was having, he always had a football party pretty much every weekend. So he decided to go over there. And then from there, another cousin showed up. And it was his birthday weekend, so he wanted to go to a bar in Henrietta called Nelson's.
Mm-hmm.
So, a bunch of them, loaded up, and they went to Nelson's. Well, from what I understand is that his brother and his wife were getting ready to leave and try to make Junior go with them. The cousin was like, he's a man, let him make his decision. You shouldn't bully him into going home. We'll take care of him if he stays. Mm-hmm. So he opted to stay. And so when he stayed, they were going to take him back to Okemah. And somehow there was, my cousin and his wife and another couple and Junior went back to Okemah. And they went to the other couple's house to party, which was maybe a block away from my aunt's house. Mm-hmm. And they said that Junior had got upset, so he left. Mm. And, and there's an alley, and you walk down the alley, and you get to my aunt's house a block away.
Right.
And they said that they went over there, and, because he was supposed to come back, and he never showed up. They said that they went to go check on him, and that's when they found him, the cousins. But they were having a big house party, and then when they were interviewed by the police, most of them were highly intoxicated, so they all had different stories. But that's when he was found. And the aunt was at his mom's house in Old Mulgee. So there wasn't even supposed to be anybody in there.
So he was supposedly alone in the home, or he would have been alone, right?
And, and the only people that would have known where, he might have gone would have been the cousin, because, his brother went home, went to bed, his mom and, his aunt, and, they were already at home in bed. So nobody really knew what really happened other than he got stabbed. But the two people, the two cousins that found him, they called her mom, who lived in Twin Hills, and they called her.
Whose mom?
They called one of our cousins' mom. They called her, and they ended up, packing up, waking up, because it happened like between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And so they packed up and started heading to Okemah. Then the other one called my sister who was, well, it was actually my cousin, but, I grew up with her, so.
Right.
But it was Junior's sister.
Mm-hmm.
They called her before they called 911. They said that Junior got stabbed. And so by the time the ambulance got there, my sister got a hold of, our brothers, started telling family, and then called my uncle who lives in Okemah. And so they got to the hospital right when he was getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, shortly after that, he passed away.
So between the time of him leaving the party upset and the cousins finding Junior, what did they believe the length of time between that was?
All within an hour.
Wow. Goodness. And how long between, would you say, him being taken to the hospital and him passing was?
Maybe 10 minutes.
So he didn't last long past that. So you said you were 8, about to turn 9 when this happened.
9, yes.
What was your relationship like with your dad at the time?
It was really good. I had him and my mother had split up, but I was still like going and visiting him and still talking to him pretty much daily.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to think that we had still a super great relationship.
Right. Was he married at the time? Did he or have a partner or anything? You said your parents had split up, but was he seeing anybody else or that you know of?
I think he was seeing multiple people.
Oh, just kind of dating around, yeah.
Right. But the last, I think, known girlfriend that he had, because didn't you go and stay with her?
Yes.
That's where, she would go and stay.
Mm-hmm.
But after he passed away, she had his phone.
Oh, okay.
And she was getting on his Facebook
Mm-hmm.
and, and making comments, because by the time, by early in the morning, people were starting to find out. I lived in Muskogee, so I found out at 7 when I got up to go to the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at my mom's, well, I didn't listen to her voicemail, but I was trying to figure out her voice text.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't understand this, so let me listen to it. So I listened to it, and that's when she told me. So I got up, and hurried up and took a shower, and then so I called my mom when I was on my way out the door, and and told her I did know, and I was going to Okemah.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just like, well, they're waiting on you. Because when Junior was little, because his mom and my mom were sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And so his mom, had a drinking problem and would always leave her kids. And so I would always take care of them. But Junior was my favorite out of her, younger kids. And so I always took care of him to a point where, I always made sure he was okay. He had everything he needed, where I didn't do that with the others. But, and she always knew that. And so that's why, she had caught a ride, from another family member and went to Okemah. And then, I let them know I was on my way. And she said, okay, we have things we have to take care of.
Right. So now that we kind of have a timeline of the situation, I kind of want to go back and just talk about Junior and who he was. Obviously, you guys called him Junior.
Right.
Did everybody call him Junior, or did everybody call him Floyd except for family? Before I continue calling him Junior.
Most people probably called him Junior.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And and they had to be classmates or teachers that called him Floyd.
Right.
Like certain family members like myself, I called him Junebug.
Oh, okay. So, kind of tell me about who he was and what he was like, his favorite hobbies. He was 28, obviously, and is a young man, that had a young daughter, who was still dating around and enjoyed football, obviously.
Big Oklahoma State fan.
Oklahoma State, yeah. Of course.
And I don't know how that happened, because we're a family of Sooners.
Oh, yeah.
And, maybe he just had to be different. I'm not really sure.
So who was he?
He was a clown. I mean, he'd like to, tease people and rag on people to a point where they would get mad at him. And I think he enjoyed people getting mad at him for that reason because, you know, I mean, he was always funny and, you know, and he just liked to pick on people. And, I mean, he was just ornery like that. I mean, you know, if you got mad at him, you know, he felt like he really did something. And, you know, and that was just the way he was. I mean, he liked sports. You know, he coached her in Little League. And, you know, and he was he was happy. You know, I didn't know that they were having the issues that they were having, you know, because he never did, you know, because I randomly talked to him, and so I never really knew until...
He and your mother?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I never really knew anything until after they broke up.
Were they ever married, or were they just...
No, they were just...
And tell me about, you said, you know, your relationship with your father was really good. When you found out, were you told, obviously you were very young, what were you told when your father died? What was that conversation like?
It was very just, my mother has always tried to be very honest with me. So she simply just put it the way it was, that my dad was found and he, you know, was no longer here. So that was what a way to wake up on your birthday, hearing that. So
right. What, I guess the question I'm kind of curious, how did those feelings kind of morph? Because obviously you're a child and maybe it doesn't settle or resonate with you what that means in the moment, because you wake up one day and your dad is gone and you're no longer here. And now it's been years, and obviously you're older and you're a grown woman now, and when did those feelings, you know, become, now I gotta find justice for my dad and I have to share his story so we can figure out what this case is, and morph from this sadness of being a little girl who no longer has her father to sharing his story and working towards getting justice for him?
I think, for me personally, I think at around the age of 12 or so is when I started having questions, when I started, you know, wanting to understand more of what happened. And I, you know, I would just ask my mom for, you know, little questions here and there, or I would ask someone else who I thought knew more to the story of what happened. Because whenever I was told, it was very just vague, very just, you know, didn't go into any detail or anything. So I think around that age is when I started, you know, having all of these questions, having, you know, wanting all of these answers, you know, and still at that age I didn't understand why nothing was being done, nothing, you know, I felt very as if nobody was trying to do anything. So I felt a lot of resentment about it, and you know, just very, very rough time. Those next few years after that were a very rough time, and still to this day, like it just, you know, crosses my mind at least 30 times a day, you know.
Who would you say you sought comfort in throughout the years as you've grown, now that, you know, throughout this, because obviously your whole family is probably asking the same questions, right? Did you feel like your family really came together in this kind of tragedy with one another, or do you feel like there was that trauma caused strife? Or
I feel like that trauma really kind of separated me from my dad's side of the family. Yeah, it just I really like kind of just lost contact with a lot of them, and yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. So what agencies specifically are on Junior's case? Is it OSBI?
OSBI and the Okemah Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the time, because I'm from Okemah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I knew the police chief and I knew the OSBI agent.
Mm-hmm.
And, and after it happened later that afternoon, they had already gone into the house, and looked for evidence and, and my aunt, she wanted to know if there was anything missing. And so they let us go into the house.
Mm-hmm.
I think you may have been gone at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so they let us go into the house, and to go into the house and see all the blood. And, it was hard because my aunt, it was her house. She couldn't even bring herself to go in because she felt guilty for being gone that weekend. She felt like if I had been home, this would have never happened. And so some of us went in the house, which I was one of them. And I took my camera and I went in and I was like taking pictures, looking for footprints. I was like, and the one thing that I remember was all the blood. But he was trying to use her phone, which was on the kitchen wall, kind of high up.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bloody handprint going down the wall. And I had nightmares for a long time, seeing that and seeing where he laid, and the blood was drying up around him, and that was really hard for me, to see. My sister and I, I had to walk out, and so I start walking down the street, and she come down, and then there was something that had caught my eye on the ground because it's like, a brick street, and then I started seeing blood drops. And then I had her to run back to the house because, the cops were still there. And, and I said, did you guys see that? They hadn't seen it because they thought that it, everything happened in the house. Come to find out, whoever did it went down the street, walked a block away, and there was a corner house, and they did not find a weapon, but whoever did it went to the house a block away and turned on their water faucet and washed their hands because it was, there was a bloody print, bloody hands on touching the water faucet, turned it on, and they left it running. They were able to get, samples of blood, but all of them were Junior's.
Right.
And at that time, even now they have two people, like suspects, but the DA doesn't want to file charges because there's no weapon. And, and it was the two people that found him. Because apparently it came out later that there was some rift between...
Now, I just want to go back just to clarify. Earlier you said two people that found him were related to him.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify before we move forward.
Okay.
Go ahead, continue.
The cousin... They're two cousins. Well, they're married to each other, but the wife is the stepdaughter to somebody on our hillside.
Okay.
And then the husband was related to us on our hillside. Well, my grandma's side, which is the Simmer side. And those two were married. The rift that I found out later was that when Junior was younger, and, had to be like early high school or whatever because the wife was that young, they used to mess around with each other. And then she got with the husband, and then he always had issue with Junior. and so we don't know, and there were other people at the house that night, at his brother's, that, because he always had a football party.
Right.
And, and there were, other friends that were there. And when the cousin came in, he had a knife. They've never been able to find that knife because he was, using it to throw against the garage wall. He was throwing it in the yard. And then, and he'd already been to prison before. And, and he was throwing that knife around. And then it just so happened that Junior got stabbed that same night, but they never could find the knife.
Now, you said everybody was like heavily intoxicated, but police did take witness statements.
Right.
Did any of the witness statements, though they were probably discounted, slightly due to intoxication, did any of those witness statements mention an argument between that cousin and Junior specifically? No. There was
nobody had noticed that there was an argument, because like for me, when I had walked down the street and seen those, the blood, I didn't know if it started at the house and, and the murderer, had the blood on his hands, or the fight started and they never made it to the house.
Right.
Because there were some statements were saying that there were some people at this party saying that they never saw Junior. So I'm not sure that Junior even made it to that party.
So let's kind of map this out for people listening and watching. So there's, and I'm going to use my little paper here. So there's a house party here, right?
And then the other house party would be about right there.
So there's two house parties.
Well, this is the house that he was found at.
House he was found at, which is your aunt's house.
Right.
This is the party, this is the house party.
Right.
That's a block away, right? And this is the one that he got in the argument with.
That's what they say.
That they say. He left this house party.
Right.
And he went back to your aunt's house.
Right.
And this is where he was found.
Right.
Okay.
And the house.
And then there was another house.
There was another house where there was.
Over here.
It was right here on this corner because they were exactly a block away, and there was blood.
Trailed to
a
this
blood
house.
trail, and so it could have went up. Or
so
it went
completely
down.
separate house than these other two. Who lived at this house?
It was some random woman.
So are they saying like?
No,
they broke in?
They don't think that she had anything to do with it. It's just that her water faucet was outside of her house.
So they would have had to break in, or
no? It was on the outside.
Oh, so like a water spout. Okay, got it.
But there was blood spots found between this house and this house, and they were exactly a block away.
Okay.
And what I noticed, because I just had to get away from this situation, so I start walking down the street, and that's when I noticed it. And so I don't know if it started there on that corner, because the blood spots, they went all the way to the house.
Right, you don't know if it was trailing from here to there or vice versa.
But there was no blood on the outside of my aunt's house.
It was all inside.
It was all inside. So the blood spatter, we don't know how he even got to the house, because everything was locked up. There was only one window that was open, and it was only like this big. Well, Junior was bigger than that. There was no way he could have gotten into it. But everything was.
So where did the blood start then? If there's no blood outside of her house, there's just dots.
I don't know. My thought was maybe they got into it on the way back from the bar, because Nelson's and Okemah, it's roughly like 17 miles. And in order to avoid the cops, they would have came, down Highway 62, which is the back way, instead of getting on I-40. And, and this house, let's see, Main Street would be a block away, so this would be 2nd Street. And my aunt lived on 3rd Street. 3rd and Cherry, 4th and Cherry. And so the way, but there were no blood spatter or anything on the front porch of her house. Yeah. So everything started on the outside. And so there was no blood in her yard, and then it started, maybe 100 feet away from her house in the street and sidewalk.
There's so many questions.
Right.
So what happened? Did police ever question those two suspects?
They questioned them. They took them to the police station that morning, and they released them because,
there's no weapon.
There was no weapon. They looked in the car. They had called their mom to come and get their car. And so her mom came and got the car and drove it back to her house.
And you said that the man had already been in prison before.
He had already been in prison.
For what? Was it a violent crime?
I think it was a violent crime, but then also when I had talked to the OSBI agent that he had been to prison in Cushing, and his cellmate ended up dead the same way. And he said that somebody came in and shanked him, but he was the one that found him. He said it's almost like the same thing with Junior, because that's what he said. He said when we came in, we found him on the floor. And he said the same thing with his cellmate.
And he reported it.
Right. And they never got him for that. And, but he said the same thing with Junior. He went into the house and found Junior. And he tried to save him. But,
Right. So, with this situation happening, it's been 14 years now? Going on 14. This year will be 14, yeah. So, where are they now?
They're no longer together, that couple.
So, they've split up.
Right.
And have they kept in touch with any of the family?
No.
Do you have any idea where they are?
The girl lives here in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. And I think he's back in Okemah at his mom's house. Mm. And see, when it all happened, like, say, at the funeral, I was going around and I was handing out the memorial folders for Junior. And
were they at the funeral?
Her mom was, and his mom was. Mm-hmm. Because, like I said, they're related to us. Mm-hmm. And there were 4 people standing in the back when I was handing them out. And one of them yelled at me. So I turned around and I went over there. And the wife's mom said, "I'm so sorry." Okay? And I just kind of just looked at her and, because I kind of already felt different, about them.
Right.
And she said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry they did this to him." And I turned around and I looked at her and I just walked off because
that can be taken 2 ways. It could be they, as in these people we don't know, these murderers out there, or it can be they that she does know.
Yeah,
correct.
And that's how I looked at it because, and I took it that way. I didn't take it that,
these random murderers,
these random people. I took it they.
Because the common, which is interesting, because the common phrase when something happens is "I'm so sorry," or "I'm so sorry for your loss," or "This is so awful."
Right.
Or "This is so heartbreaking." I'm sorry they did this to him is very odd and very telling. Wow.
And and I went and I think I walked away and I was crying.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sister came up to me and she said, "What are you crying about?" And then I told her, and then she was like, "Well, I don't even want her here."
The mother.
Yeah, I don't even want her here.
So,
And, and I told Lisa, I said,
so the two that found him didn't even come to the funeral.
no. But their moms were
Yes,
there.
their mothers were there.
So what's odd to me is that their family, and they found him, so they say, and they try to save him, but then they don't come to the funeral or try.
No, they weren't there.
That seems so odd to me. Unless they were specifically asked not to because you guys had already decided that you thought that they were the ones responsible, but to not be like, I want to, send my condolences. I want to send him off. This is really devastating.
They weren't even there. They didn't even.
But to not even try.
They didn't even show up even at the wake service or viewing. They never signed the book because when my aunt had the book, I went back and I looked.
Right.
To see if they, because like during the viewing, my aunt, we had, I was running her around, so I was like, we weren't
You
there.
were busy, yeah.
We weren't there the whole time.
Right.
And so, anybody could have came in at that point and signed the book and been gone and the family not see them.
Right.
But they never even signed. They never even came.
That just seems so odd. Unless they felt that other people had already decided they were guilty or they felt guilty.
They felt guilty, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how I took it too. I felt like there was guilt,
Mm-hmm.
especially for her mom to say that,
Mm-hmm.
to me. And
Did his mom ever say anything?
his mom talked to another cousin, looking for a medicine man. And, and that was strange. Because, like I said, she's related to us too. So she talked to another cousin who's close to my mom and was asking for a medicine man.
And for those listening who might not be watching, what tribe are you a part of?
Muskogee Creek Nation. Okay. And so, and she was like, "I'm not going to help you." And so it was never brought up until, at kind of like, I found out maybe a month or two later that, and this was the week leading up to the funeral. And I talked to different people because at the time I worked for the Creek Nation Travel Plaza. And so I knew a lot of cops, coming in and everything. And I had asked, I had talked to one of my friends. I was like, "I want to talk to you about this. You're a cop and you're going to tell me,
Right.
I said, I want you to tell me the truth on what you think about this." And so I told him the story because he kind of knew because I wasn't at work. And so he stood there and he listened to me talk about the whole murder scene, how many times he'd been stabbed, everything. And he said,
Which 18 times is intentional, and it's passionate, it's
Right.
intentional, and it's purposeful. It's not a robbery, gone wrong. It's not an accident. It's not an argument that turned into something
he told
violent.
me he said it was a crime of passion
Exactly.
because,
Because if it's an argument that turns into something more violent, it's once or twice, and then you're running away. If it's a
Right.
robbery, it's once or twice, and then you're running away with whatever you were trying to steal. If it's 18 times, it's intentional, and like I said, it's passionate. It's a crime of passion, and it's purposeful.
myself, I wanted to know because I knew where the funeral home that we took him to. So I knew one of the workers, and I knew that he was going to be the one to work on Junior.
Mm-hmm.
And I texted him and I asked him, can you send me a picture? I want to see what he looks like before you get him ready. And he was like, if I do that for you, you have to promise me you'll never show anybody. And I said, I promise.
Right.
And he did. He sent it to me before he put makeup on him and before he worked him up. Junior had, that's how I found out he had 18 stab wounds. And he counted them for me. And one of the ones that most people didn't even realize that he got stabbed in the face. He got stabbed in his cheekbone. And, you know, they made it look like it wasn't there. And he had defensive wounds all over his arms. And that to a point where we had to go and buy him a long sleeve shirt to put on underneath his shirt. And they wrapped up his arms in saran wrap to keep, keep it from bleeding. And, and then they had to fix the inside and, and put a small pillow there.
Right.
Or like a liner to keep, everything in place. But he was also, his spinal cord was severed. So he was stabbed in the back. And so, and so there was no way that he could move, He just basically just laid there.
That makes me curious if he was stabbed in the back. That makes me curious if he was first attacked from behind.
He was a big guy. And, and there were multiple family members that I had talked to, up to the funeral and stuff. They said that Junior was so stout because they had played stickball against him. And they couldn't get him down. And so they said that it would take multiple people to get him down. And, and he had defensive wounds. So I think that it started face to face.
Oh, you think so?
I think it started face to face. And then when he was trying to get away, like, say, get to the phone, I think that's when he got stabbed in the back.
That's awful. Did any of the agencies ever said that they could, I guess, try to, I'm trying to think of the word, serve a warrant to search the home of either of those individuals and try to find a weapon?
They tried, I don't think they served a warrant, but they went openly to, the wife's parents' house, and they would not talk to them. They talked to them one time, and after that, they would not talk to them. They went to the other mother's house and tried to talk to her, and she wouldn't answer questions.
So they both refused, and they never served a warrant to force them, like force entry. So.
And, but I do know that, knowing both families, the one had his mom, 6 or 7 miles south of Okemah is the North Canadian River. And, and the area they grew up, they lived in Okemah, but the majority of them grew up in the Bearden area. And their family had a lot of land. And then, and then the other side, their family, were from Stillwell.
Right.
And then he also had family in Wewoka area. Okay, which is, there's a lot of lakes between here and there. And, that they could have gotten rid of it.
Yeah.
Or it could be, hidden, somewhere on their family property.
So you don't think that knife is...
I don't think...
You don't think it's around?
I don't think it's around. But, and I understand, after he passed, and his mom had passed, a few years later, and then his dad passed away a couple years after that. And, and I promised his mom, that I wouldn't let this die.
Right.
And so I did call the OSBI agent. And, and sometimes I would meet with him and the police chief if I was in Okemah, and we would sit down and we would talk about things, because I was trying to be open-minded, as far as which way it could go, where the weapon could be.
Right.
And, because knowing both sides of the family, I had, things that I could tell them, to help them look.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, it just got to a point where I was hearing the same thing over and over. There's no new leads.
Mm-hmm.
And, when they called me, and somebody from OSBI called me and to say, we want to put his name on a card that circulates in
The
prison.
prisons. Mm-hmm.
And,
The playing cards.
the playing cards. And I said, do it. Because,
Right.
I thought, maybe, somebody in prison knows.
Right.
And, and then I did, and then I've done another, it was a cold case files out of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that, and then when Janet Clark called me about something else, and then I thought it was about this.
Mm-hmm.
And then, she was like, well, if you want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
we can put you on this show. And
Right.
so I, was letting his siblings know. And then one day I was talking to her mom about, her grandmother. And I was like, you think Micah will want to go on? Because now she's old enough to.
Right.
She's old enough because I'm probably one of the people she was mad at, because I always felt like, it's not that I didn't want Micah to know. I just felt like she was too young, because, like with kids, they want something,
Mm-hmm.
figured out.
Right.
And this wasn't going to be something that was going to be figured out, because I was getting the same information all the time. So I would call, but then I wouldn't tell anybody I even called, because it was going to be the same thing, because I was going to get questions that I didn't have the answers to. So to avoid the questions, I didn't say.
Right. So in your mind, and I want this answer from both of you, since the DA is saying without a weapon we can't, file charges, essentially, and take this to trial, and that kind of leaves this, open, because we don't know where that knife is. And also, I'm kind of assuming from both of you, you both are in agreement of who you believe is responsible for Junior's
Probably.
murder.
Yes.
So what does justice look like for Junior?
You can go ahead first.
For me, I think that I would like the charges to go ahead and be filed. And, I would like to see them get arrested,
Mm-hmm.
even without the weapon.
Right.
Because, it's been almost 14 years. They probably think we forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
So why not put them on notice that we didn't forget? I mean, Junior didn't get to watch his kid grow up. Why do they get the opportunity to watch theirs?
Mm-hmm.
He's never going to get to experience, her graduating from high school, her having her first kid, her buying her first house. He doesn't get to see that. Why
Right.
should they? And I say follow the charges without the weapon
Mm-hmm.
and put them on notice. And we didn't forget. Why should you?
Right.
I think that's exactly what I was gonna say. Even without having a weapon, I still believe that they could still file these charges and just really wake them up and make them realize that we haven't given up, we haven't stopped talking about him, we haven't stopped trying to to do everything we can for him. So really, yeah, that's what I want, is for them to at least file the charges, arrest them, and see what happens from there.
Right. Well, thank you both so much for coming and speaking with me and sharing Junior's story. And I hope that this is one step further into getting the answers you both want and getting the justice that he deserves. I really do. If anybody watching or listening knows anything that can help Floyd's case, there will be a number on the screen or an email that you can send an anonymous tip to OSBI or Okemah Police, and you can send your help there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.